In my 25 years of being an entrepreneur with a heavy focus in sales and sales training, I found that one of the most daunting things for folks, really in any industry, is going to be picking up the phone. You know, people can be terrified of it. It can be a terrifying thing. We talk about it internally or joke about it internally. We call it the 1,000-pound phone. Today I'm going to share a few tips and techniques that I've developed and taught throughout the years that are going to help you really get prepared for making that initial phone call. So what to do before you actually pick up the phone. Let's go ahead and dive in. Number one, be prepared with the top 3 to 5 objections and rebuttals. Guys, every industry, every sale is going to have just standard objections that you're going to have to overcome throughout the sales process. In most industries, you're going to know what those are going to be up front. If you're moving into a new industry, of course, or starting to sell a new product or service, it really is going to boil down to product knowledge. So obviously, industry-specific knowledge is going to be super important there. You want to know the ins and outs of your product and service, of course. You want to know what those objections are before they come at you. And of course, you want to be prepared with a solid and an honest response to that. It's not always going to be what they want to hear, of course. You don't have to sugarcoat things. We're certainly not going to, encourage you to, kind of bend the truth or fudge the truth when you're talking about this, but you're going to know what those objections are, you're going to know how to handle them, and you're going to be prepared. The quicker that you can really be on your toes when those objections come in, the faster that trust is going to be built. Now, if you're kind of jogging your memory to try and figure out what the objection or what the rebuttal to that objection is going to be, on the other end, that might come off as you're not, entirely confident in your product or your service offering. So it's important to be prepared for these objections when they come out so that you can accurately respond to them. It's also important to validate the concern. So when these objections come in, your response is going to be simple. Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, I really, appreciate that question. It's a very valid question, or it's a very valid concern. Here's my answer to that. So you want to validate their concern. It doesn't matter how ridiculous it is. Most of the time they're not going to be ridiculous, but unless it's something just completely off the planet, strange, what you're going to do is to say, that's a valid concern. Validate the concern and then move directly from that objection or that concern right into your rebuttal for it. Number 2 is going to be find the decision maker as early as possible in the sales process. So, if you don't have that contact of that decision maker when you pick up the phone, you're going to want to get there as quickly as possible. That way you're not, really delivering your pitch on a lower level employee that doesn't have any decision-making power anyways. And you may run into a situation where they're going to say, well, let me know kind of what it's about, and then I'll pass that information on to them. I don't care what the product or service is. There's no one that's going to be able to sell it better than I am. So relying on, kind of a middleman, if you will, to relay the information accurately, and as far as explaining what the value proposition is to the decision maker, I'm certainly not going to rely on that. So I want to climb that ladder as quickly as possible, even if it's just simply working on the receptionist. So if I'm calling in cold, I don't know who the decision maker is, I've got the receptionist on the phone, I'm going to ask, kind of some simple leading questions. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Mrs. Receptionist, or, whoever you happen to be talking to, here's my product and service. Do you know who handles the purchasing of that within your organization? In most cases, they're going to be able to point you at least in the right direction and or give you a name. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to connect you with them. A lot of decision makers obviously have those gatekeepers for a reason to avoid those types of phone calls. However, if all you do is get the name of the decision maker, that's kind of a win. You can chalk that up that way. Next time you do call into them, you've got that receptionist on the phone. Hopefully you remember her name at that point, and that's going to be important as well to go ahead and pick that dialogue back up and have that familiarity. So it's not necessarily a cold call, and then you're asking for that decision maker by name. That's a lot different than calling in cold and not knowing who you're looking for. Also, while you've got that receptionist on the phone, if she's not able or you're not able to reach the decision maker, go ahead and ask for the email. That way you've got the email. You can go ahead and send out a personal email from you, introducing yourself, letting them know that you're servicing the account. You're going to be continuing to reach out to them so that they're familiar with your name, they're starting to get familiar with your business, and of course your offering. So, and that's going to be a second point of contact as well. So even if you're just getting the decision maker's name and the email for them on that initial phone call, guys, that's again going to be a win. While you got them on the phone, if the receptionist is willing to share information, you've developed some initial rapport there, go ahead and maybe ask some additional questions like, what's the best time that they can be reached? Do you know who they're currently utilizing for my product or service? Do they seem happy with that? How long has that relationship been going? So you want to probe and prod that receptionist. Again, if she's willing, if you can recognize on that phone, or you can sense that they're starting to get frustrated or a little bit annoyed with you, obviously politely excuse yourself from that conversation. You don't want to be that person that way the next time they call in, they're just rushing to get you off the phone as quickly as possible. So if they're willing to give it information, go ahead and press politely and gently ahead for some additional questions to be answered if possible. So long and short is anything that you can do on that initial phone call, even if you don't get that decision maker to really prep or give you an edge going into that next time, going into that next phone call, when you do actually get that decision maker on the phone, you've got some immediate things that you can talk about. Number 3, it's going to be relax and have fun. Guys, it sounds super elementary, but the minute you start relaxing and really having fun, on those phone calls, the more often those are going to start converting over to sales. People want to buy from someone that appears to be having fun on the phone, someone that's relaxed, someone that's calm, someone that may be joking back and forth or having some banter with them. The minute that you start, trying to sell or approaching people with that kind of hairs on fire mentality, where you're rushing, you seem desperate to get a sale, you seem overly serious, it's really hard to convert. Now, results may vary, of course. There's people that are going to have different styles that really work well for them, but I found that in general, when you're having fun, when you've got kind of an open, free dialogue with the prospect, it tends to convert to a sale a lot more than if you go in and they've got that kind of defensive, posture to them because you're going in, ultra serious. So I've got a funny story. I was working an event years ago, and we do these kind of periodically, where we'll actually call on leads of folks that are coming in town for these events. And these are, some are seasoned real estate investors, some are kind of newbies. And what we'll do is show, hey, well, these are the scripts, these are the techniques that we're going to, train you on ultimately, and here's how they work. And we'll make live phone calls right in front of them, and sometimes in front of, audiences of several hundred. I remember one specific time falling flat. I was making these phone calls in front of some folks and just, wasn't doing well. So I, took all the leads back up to my hotel room at this convention center that we were staying at, and started making some phone calls, still flat. What I did was I walked in the bathroom, I looked at myself in the mirror, and I screamed as loud as I could. And I made myself start laughing because it was just so ridiculous what I was doing. Turns out the funny part was that I stepped away from the mirror and was just kind of laughing at myself. And I looked over, and out of the corner of my eye, one of the maids had come in there while I was doing that, and she certainly thought I was a little bit crazy at that point, but it kind of broke the ice. Sat back down, picked up the phone, had that kind of edge off, if you will, started making phone calls and really hit the ground running, and started really, getting some momentum and having some success with that. So, if you are in kind of a rut on the phone and you do feel like you're kind of falling flat, don't be afraid to splash some water on your face, go for a jog, do some jumping jacks, do some burpees, whatever the thing is going to be that's going to, really kind of break you out of that funk and re-energize you, before you hop on those phone calls and kind of get in that relaxed zone, do it. Screaming in the mirror worked for me. Try something new for yourself. Maybe you're going to have something more outlandish than that. Another thing that people are terrified about the phone is they're afraid that they're going to have a negative response on the other end of that, whether it's, an angry prospect that is upset that you reached out to them. Maybe they even hang up on you. People are terrified about getting hung up on the phone. Well, during our sales training, it's never fun to get hung up on. And depending on the product or service that you're selling, it doesn't happen all that often, but it does happen. And when it does happen, we always tell our sales folks, you know what? Make them hang up on you twice. Have fun with it. Laugh it off and call back. Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, I don't know what happened, but it appears that we got disconnected. Is this still a good time for us to chat? And ultimately, they may hang up on you again, but we've done that a couple times, and they say, you know what? I'm sorry I did hang up on you, or whatever the case may be, and you get right back into that sales pitch. So make them hang up on you twice. And again, that sounds kind of silly, if you will, but it again takes that sensitivity out of it, because I so don't care that I got hung up on. I'm gonna pick up the phone, and just for my own giggles, I'm gonna make them hang up on me twice. Number 4, this is a big one, guys. Remember, it's a contact sport, which means it's gonna take a lot of contact. On average, across all industries and sales, it's gonna take an average of 7 contacts before that prospect gets converted to a sale. That means there's going to be on average 6 times that you've reached out or contacted those individuals and they have not pulled the trigger on moving forward with you. The reason I'm sharing this with you is to let you know to not get discouraged. If you've reached out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times and they've not converted for whatever the reason may be, keep going. And guys, I've converted sales, we've converted sales where we've talked to folks, 8, 10, 12, 15 times, as long as they're still interested. And at the end of that phone call, you're saying, hey, look, I think we've got we're a really good fit for each other. I think I've got a product or a service that's really going to be great for you. As long as you're okay with me continuing to follow up, I'm going to continue to do that. And undoubtedly, in most cases, they're going to say yes. So, the fortune is in the follow-up. We say that all the time. On average, 7 times to contact a prospect before it converts to a sale. So keep that in mind. Do not get discouraged during the sales process if you haven't converted it yet. Number 5 is going to be approach the sale with humility and a helpful attitude. Your approach to them can simply be, I may have something that can solve a problem for you. I mean, when you say that and you say it with that soft approach, what are they going to say to you? No thanks, I like my problems? No. Most rational people that have someone say, hey, look, I can potentially solve a problem for you, the response is going to be, why? What can you do for me? How can you help me? That's going to be the typical response just by saying that, simple phrase up front, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, I may be able to solve a problem for you. That's strong. That doesn't feel to them like they're being sold. It, again, by design, makes it feel like you're helping solve a problem or fill a void, which is exactly what you're doing. And in that same vein, this approach really is meant to just keep the door propped open or even prop the door open initially. As long as you can continue to keep flopping, as long as you can continue to have that dialogue, you still have a chance of converting them to a sale. Hopefully some of these communications and sales techniques will help you in business and in life. We're going to be doing a video, so stay tuned for part 2 of this, which is going to be what you do when you actually get on the phone. Got some great tips and techniques for when you actually have the decision maker on the phone and how to handle those phone calls. So until next time, guys, take care. We'll see you on the next video. Thanks.